southeast through the area over the course of the next few hours. I'm going to go ahead and show you again some of the cameras here as we're looking live, and again trying to particular track road conditions there to see all playing out. But as you can see, they're out in the Ackerman area. The roads, luckily not, but wet roads and frozen roads, when we talk about freezing rain, are going to look pretty similar. So that's not a shock that the roads look wet. We have not heard a lot of reports of issues at this point out of Ackerman, but that means also that a lot of folks are staying off of the roads there. As you can see, zooming in a little bit on our camera, the North Mississippi Storm Chasers, folks are traveling down the road. You know, obviously it's wet. We discourage travel because that is one of many locations that are under these freezing rain advisories, and these trees, that's one of the many things that we are going to be watching. One of the things that unfortunately has started to come in more is icing on those different trees, because there's just so many surfaces to get iced, and that's what it causes them to bend and break, and that's the thing that obviously we don't want to contend with. As we look at pictures here, this picture coming in from Boonville, and this is the issue with pine trees. It is submitted, by the way, using the Mississippi Live Weather app. Two things with that. You can join the conversation, of course, on socials. But as I'm going to put up, again, our QR codes there for the app for just a moment, I want to show you, again, this shot here of the pine tree from up there in Boonville. Again, it's not excessive, but you start adding ice to this, and it doesn't look like much. But you take this times all of the needles there on that tree. Now, all those pine needles easily weigh double, and you add much more than that. That's when we start causing some issues, especially if we, you know, really add a lot more. I'll pull down those QR codes. We'll talk more about the app in a minute. But as we have some Ackerman and Aberdeen and all across the area, we appreciate y'all for supporting us, liking, subscribing, doing all the things with Mississippi Live Weather here. You know, your weather pictures, I mean, just tons of those continue to come in at this time, and a lot of them continue to show icing. This is ice. It's those flat surfaces that are going to end up getting them first, and obviously the icing that, you know, causes more issues there. I want to get you the name on that one if we can find it. Again, they're coming in fast and furious, showing some of the ice that we have. We'll kind of check out other spots coming up here in a few minutes. Join us on, again, submitting those photos. We're trying to get some albums online on Facebook so you can kind of browse through all of them yourselves as opposed to just watching here. But I'd say the best way to send in your photos is using the Mississippi Live Weather app. You send those to us and we can get those on the air fairly quickly. This ice storm is kind of a region, not just here, it's kind of all across the region. And so kind of a meeting of the minds here. I do want to bring in Ben Luna. Ben Luna is an amazing person, and everything I've done here would not exist without what he has done. Kind of perfected this idea up at Tennessee Valley Weather, up in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. We do from time to time, they live up in the shoals like, hey, cover us. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're already covered because you've got Ben. And Ben, thank you so much for joining us. How are things up there in your neck of the woods as of 2:37?
Well, Matt, can you hear me good?
I can. You sound great.
Okay, good. Okay, so we've kind of did a little bit of changing of the guard. I've come on home. Fred's still at the studio. He's going to be doing cut-ins on our the night shift, and then whatever we have coming in during the overnight tomorrow. Actually, not right there. There you go. Better than what I anticipated. However, we are just now starting to get some report trees and branches either weighing very, very, very far down and putting tension on lines, or we've actually had one or two reports of some down lines. Overall, people here have really heeded the message. There's some traffic accidents at this point. There's not on road across the area of the Tennessee Valley. I think there's been a few wrecks in the Florence area, but nothing major at this point, from what I understand. But overall, it's going fair, I would say, as of right now. Nothing major to infrastructure at this time, but you can see things not as dramatic as North Mississippi, but there are definitely some signs that we're We're on that road.
Yeah, really are. And I think this is one thing that I want to come from somebody else that, again, I believe to be an authority in their area. This is, I'm not going to say we're at the beginning of this, but there's still a long ways to go. A lot of times when we have icing events, it's, this is just, 24 hours left. Or where?
No, and you look back, there's still a lot of action to be had, and there's definitely a concern. Everybody is on edge. I've been talking with area EMAs, and there are a lot of resources ready to deploy all across the Southeast to help people. It's just, unfortunately, what it's going to come down to is, okay, who's hardest, where's there the greatest need, and then they go from the triage situation. But overall, things are staged. I think the forecasting of this event worked very, very well because everybody from top down, from federal to local, really took heed. They started positioning assets and teams ready to come in and help once conditions allow it, and start to rebuild and restore infrastructure in areas that are affected. I think to note, other than the outpouring that we've had from, where was my 35 inches of snow or 100, whatever, and it's whatever. But I told somebody, I said, just go build an Iceman or something. I think for this to be learned, but I'm happy at this point with Bridge and how things have gone. Nothing has caught anybody by, at least at this point.
Okay, well, hopefully that's the way. A lot of folks, talking about trees getting heavier, some issues there. I do need to ask, one of the children in the other room to double check the stream, say it's glitching, and that might just be the fact that it might be double picking up your audio because I don't have an earpiece in, which I guess I should do if I was doing this the right way. Hold on, let me put an earpiece in because I'd reprimand something else. It said it's break again, so I'm trying to figure out if that is me. I'm gonna let's see how far behind or behind on that studio. I don't know if that's just on my system here. Yeah, I know. So hopefully it's not glitching. We can't hear. Pretty glitchy.
Like if you is going well, but are you going back to the studio with this?
Yeah, it's going back to the studio. You're getting this from the studio feed. Whole stream's glitching.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I may have a solution.
Okay.
So let me call you and let's work through some stuff.
Okay.
I don't want to say take a break, but go full screen radar.
If we need to take a break to get this fixed, that's what we've got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take a break and then let's kind of come back and I'll walk you through a couple things. So this is how this works. This is fixing stuff on the fly. I love it. I know it's kind of glitchy. But it's nothing we've dealt with it too from time to time. So
I love how someone says sounds good now. Mine's not glitching now. Maybe better with the earbud. Audio is glitching worse than video.
Well, hey, give me just a second and I'll tell you.
Okay.
Let me look because I can pull the app, the master feed.
And again, this is I want to introduce everyone. This is Ben Luna. Ben Luna is one day when they write the book on how I don't need to put in the earpiece yet because we haven't talked on the phone. But one day when they write about how television changed, they're going to show Ben Luna, and you're one of the folks that Nick Pittman that just kind of redefined how all this is done. Kudos to you, and definitely couldn't have done it. And I don't think anybody would have expected that Lawrenceburg, Tennessee would have been the mecca for the next generation of broadcast. But oddly enough, it has been. Everyone says it's. Some people say it's glitching, not glitching. Much better. Stop glitching now. I'll bet it was just the audio. I'll bet the audio is the issue because I had you coming through. I didn't have it on my. That's just me being
Yeah,
lazy since don't have to plug it in a vMix call, and so I didn't.
the
Yeah, but
no, everything looks good. I don't see any glitching. Audio looks good. Sound or audio sounds good. Watching it here, so I think everything's good.
okay,
Latency is really good too.
okay,
Nothing major going on with it.
okay,
So
okay, great. Because yeah, I haven't because it was flashing like the stream would flash yellow, and so I knew that's when it was dropping, and it has not done that. I haven't seen it do it a single time since we did this last reboot and did everything. So back there, there's you got to get behind the board, but there's some wood back there someplace. So we're on the wide map here. We kind of have the first. We had some earlier today, but I think the first real kind of major wave sort of coming through now, where we see whatever accumulations it is. It's interesting. You have another wave back there toward Texas, and probably another one back toward the center of the main system there. That's part of the reason why this is just going to keep coming. Is there's just these ripples that have come through. You have lived in this region your whole life. I have
mhm,
not. People tell me about 94. You lived 94, like a
I
lot of other
did.
folks. Like how I don't like comparing to the benchmark. It's like when people say, well, is it like 2011's tornadoes? It's like, well, that thing's its thing all over by itself. And 94 is kind of that ice storm event it's all over by itself, right? Um,
Yes.
and I see Borrowland 5744 saying, thank God it didn't turn out to be 94. There are multiple waves. We're at the beginning. So just
Yes.
hold up now. We hope it doesn't go that far. We hope it's more sleet. There's some encouraging signs there. But major ice storm is still very much on the table, right?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple takeaways from 94 versus now. One, anytime that you mention ice, and in my career here, which my entire career has been between Tennessee and Alabama, um, and anytime that the words I or the word ice left my mouth during a general forecast for winter. Hey, there's a chance for a little bit of mixed precip, snow, maybe some sleet, icing conditions. Instantly, 94 came to mind for viewers from Tennessee, Alabama, wherever I was. And that got referenced. Now, 94, and I say this out of kind of like a weather history moment, was done at least in my area of Lawrenceburg, Tennessee to Florence, Alabama. About a quarter of an inch of ice is what debilitated the area. Now, a lot of lessons were learned during the 94 ice storm. And I'm not going to say that something like that won't happen again because, who knows what tomorrow could bring. But for the most part, those lessons learned were lessons that were implemented, and a lot of infrastructure, one, got upgraded over the past 32 years. Two, and this is the biggest takeaway from this, the ice storm of 94, yes, you had ice that collected on the lines that in itself did some damage. The majority of the damage across the southeast during that event, trees collapsing on lines and doing those issues. Most utility companies across Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee implemented what's called a right of way program. And that's where if you have a line and you start to have overgrowth of trees, let me get that in frame, on that line, then what they'll do is every so often utility crews will come in and they will cut back those trees and leave plenty of room for that line. That way there's nothing hanging over them. And therefore, if you do have icing by the winter, then things are not as bad, or they're pretty much okay if you start to see down branches, down trees. Luckily, I think a lot of people did that. A lot of systems have done that very, very well over the past few years. Um, Not to say that there aren't some problem areas, couldn't be some problem areas, but overall, 94 lesson learned, 2026 lessons implemented.
Yeah, I think that, and talking to electric power cooperatives, that's one of the things I talked about. Nobody likes seeing a green tree get cut, right? It makes sense. Oh, that's a dead branch. Let's do something with it, But that preventative maintenance is, I think, the biggest lesson learned. It's not to say that some of that wasn't done before, but
Hmm.
understanding the strictness with which they had to go. And when we first moved here, we're like, that's half a tree, and everyone's like 94.
Yep.
I mean, it was just it was the instantaneous reaction, and it's it is again the active management of that I think is something that hopefully will save, make 94 a one time thing. You can have significant ice and maybe not have as significant impacts, hopefully, because of that.
And I think that, like, if you look at the Tennessee Valley Authority and how the main transmission lines are, I mean, they've cut little fields for every. There's nothing around those things, and that keeps the mains active. And we had one, jumping gears from winter weather to tornadic weather. We had a tornado probably about 10 years ago that hit a TVA transmission line, and those guys, and it was strong enough. It picked the whole thing up, tied it into a
Whew.
bow tie, threw it back down. One of the most amazing sights I've seen. And they had that rebuilt and online within about 4 hours.
That's
Like,
incredible to think about.
once their infrastructure got there, like the metal pieces and such and lines. I mean, it went like that. I mean, I was like, hey, because I went out to shoot video for it and take pictures, and I got out there and it was like, I thought y'all said that went away, and they were like, yeah, it did. There's the old one laying over there. That's the new one. I said, well, that was only about 5 hours ago, 4 or 5 hours ago, and there, yeah. So, again, lessons learned, lessons implemented. Not that you can't have issues in spots. There will always be that risk. But you mentioned something else when y'all moved here, and you all came here for work, of course.
Mhm.
But the area population has grown significantly over the past 25 years.
Yeah.
I think, too, that that's played a part in it because that infrastructure has worked its way out, and you have had a lot of clearing of trees, and that's uh, good and bad. The good from this aspect, there's less things that can fall on lines and such. And then you also have a lot of communities that have started underground utility implementation as well.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. And think of my case. We'd have had above ground wires all the way to the road. I live back away from the road quite a ways in the middle of woods, and instead, in our situation here, most of it's below ground. There is a portion, a run of it that is above ground, and that's probably the part that when our power goes out, it's usually something hits that, it arcs, and they have to come do what they need to do um, with the transformer to get it back up and going again. And below ground really wasn't. I mean, wasn't it was just as important then, but it wasn't done. And I think '94 taught us how valuable doing at least part of it below ground is.
Yes, absolutely. Where I live is all underground. The entire system is not, but at least in our neighborhood and points around, there's been that big push over the past few years to do underground, not just uh, uh, power, but also internet lines, cable lines, etc., to really mitigate a lot of those potential issues from happening again.
Yeah, I mean
So,
it's all about you do you apply the lessons learned from the past to the present, right? It's the same reason people, communities that are impacted by this are always more sensitive to it. I say my job is infinitely easier here in Mississippi than it ever was in Texas, because the last big tornado to hit that part of Texas when I was there, I spent 7 years in Lubbock, Texas before I moved here, and nobody took tornadoes seriously there. Let's be perfectly honest, they didn't, because you walk out on
mhm.
your step and you could see it. But the last meaningful high-end tornado that they had was 1970, and it was EF5, and it killed a bunch of people. But by the time I got there in the early 2000s, you were 30 years removed from that, and so you had 35-year-old people that did not really get it because they were five and under when it hit. And so that's a huge chunk of the population. Here, unfortunately, we've just been so exposed to some of those high-end events that people have the recollection. And as I'm watching here behind the scenes, one of the things that jumped out, someone's like, "Do we think there's a bunch of to do about nothing?" Dear God, I hope, but I don't think that's the case quite yet. I think we're going to continue to see a lot of icing, a lot of sleet, and maybe if we're lucky, it's horizontal icing, not that radial icing for the lines. But we are seeing more and more lines, unfortunately, with some of that on there. But all of that to say, I think people around here, because they have a benchmark like 94. Many of them know what is possible and thus take it seriously. And those folks that are like, "Oh, is this going to be it?" Those are the folks that either were, young and rash and brash then, and didn't see firsthand or didn't have firsthand no power for 3 weeks. To find those
Well,
folks are the ones that take this seriously.
and I believe that there are other people who have that, lack of a better word, the ego of the storm, if you will, to say, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're wrong, and it's not going to do it." Oh, there are some. Now, there are some that are just straight out arrogant like that, and I get that. People are people, and you can be who you want to. But I think there is a certain amount of those people. I don't know the percentage. I don't want to guess the percentage, but I think a good chunk of them act that way and say things because storm anxiety, storm
Mm-hmm.
fear, be it a tornadic event or a winter storm event. And I know several people who have severe weather anxiety. And that, I think that becomes deniability to say, "Oh, you're wrong. This event's not going to be that," in hopes that it's not going to be that. Because
Yeah.
and it's perfectly okay. It's perfectly fine. I wanted to grow up to be a meteorologist because I was scared to death of storms. A four,
Same here.
five, six, 7 year old kid. Most of us in this field got into it, for similar reasons. And I'll never forget lightning hit the transformer outside my bedroom window when I was, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. And I thought, and I was just petrified of the storms. And I thought at that time, okay, if I learn about the storm, maybe I won't be so afraid of it. And that's what I did. I learned about the the science of meteorology, and just kind of said I want to keep this up. And here I'm on the number one severe weather coverage show in the United States. So
Well, I appreciate you saying
in
that,
my
but I think
20%, by the way.
you did what I think mostly we should do. Again, these are icing pictures coming in. I'll give the location on that one. That one looks fairly significant. That one, ice on a tree. Let's double check the location here for a moment. You're watching Mississippi Live Weather. I'm talking to Ben Luna, owner and managing meteorologist of Tennessee Valley Weather. That one looking to Kosciuszko. That's interesting there. Kosciuszko with some decent freezing rain on that. Again, we're very much at the infancy of what will probably be a pretty rough day or so here ahead with icing. You know, you feed knowledge, and you can bring it. I mean, bring it context, right? Maybe you can't completely
Yes.
remove fear, but with context, we understand what is possible and what is likely. And listen, there's possibilities, right? It's possible a tree falls on I'm in the middle of a forest. I'm not cleared away trees in the right directions, but it is possible that a tree falls on my head in this room, but it's not likely. It's likely that the
Yeah.
tree branches fall right down below where they bend and break, more so than the whole thing coming down on me here. I'm just far enough away. Possible and likely are two different things. And I think knowledge helps us to understand, yeah, something might be possible, but it might not be likely.
You never deal in absolutes.
Yeah.
Never. There's always a potential for something. And to echo what you said, two different things. Two different things. And I think that plays a part in what we do to communicate, to tell the story to people, to say, "Hey, this event, you need to be aware. You need to be aware. Don't worry about it." And then there are other events that we've had where we go on and we tell people, hey, look, this event, whatever it may be, for us in the past couple of years, we've had a couple really, really potentially high tornado days where we did have a couple fatal tornado touchdowns, um, where we've said today could be a life threatening day. You need to take this serious. And so I think
Yeah.
that's our job to help alleviate or not amplify, but to strongly inform either side of the spectrum for people if they
In this
listen.
situation here, it's kind of hard. Um, this we are more toward like the ice storm. I said that some of this was kind of even taken out of our hands when you looked at. I'll pull it back up beside me. The bullseye in the WSSI, which is I guess lingo for the winter storm severity index. Is clear across not just Matt, but looking at the nation as a whole, bullseye on where the minimum icing and winter weather impacts were and are, and it's over top of us. And so this is not this was not a rocket science event. Like, this was very straightforward from the get go. It was like, well, what type of precip earlier in the week, and then iPhones are saying feet of snow. And as I posted on social media, apparently my daughter woke up this morning saying, "Why didn't I have snow?" Maybe 17 feet, 18 feet over there is where she sits when I do my work every day. Doesn't always listen to me. But the point is this. I think we were pretty clear as soon as it was reasonable that this was primarily going to be ice and that we're in the bullseye of this. And that's not just our opinion. I would say that's national consensus on this from really all stakeholders involved. This one is easy to say, hey, there's high ice impacts. Maybe we get lucky and go more sleet than freezing rain. But, for the folks that are like, well, hold on. This is not, this isn't that bad. We still have 20 hours or so to go before this is over.
Yeah. And again, you can, within our perspective and where we are, we can only do so much. And then it comes down to, in my opinion, a matter of faith. And to
I hear a me going on in the background. Give me a second.
Oh, oops, sorry.
Oh, there are so many tabs here. There's almost no way I'm going to find the me that we're talking about. That's fine. Well, hopefully Ghost Matt doesn't pop up in again. Who knows? I probably have 100 tabs open. Don't tell Ben Luna. He'd yell at me from my system. He'd probably
I logged
May I
into
say
his
that's
system
all
one
off of
day.
a laptop that you convinced me to buy last year at about this time.
I remember I logged in. No, it was the day that I came down to the studio and opened the browser, and it was like, Matt, how many tabs? Now, you're not the worst. There's another mutual friend of ours that puts you to shame with the number of tabs. Mike Witcher.
Which one?
East Tennessee Weather's Mike Witcher in Knoxville. Witcher has like a 48-inch monitor in his studio, and there are tabs, little teeny tiny tabs from one end of that thing to the other, and I'm like, dude, I don't know, but anyway, I'm OCD
you mentioned Witcher. We're part of this kind of collective here, presently calling ourselves, of course, the National Weather Network, that extends really from coast to coast, of just independent meteorology groups and meteorologists. Some cases people by themselves, other cases full teams of meteorologists. And like in your case, you do meteorology, you do sports, probably news at some point here, just so many different things you in. And so this is kind of the next way, as this says, local weather redefined. I guess this is TV. I don't know what 0.0 we're on here, but it's the next one.
It is. It's exciting because we're on the forefront of something neat, and it's returning localized broadcast content. Yes, it was built around weather. We're all in the weather sphere here, but for us at Tennessee Valley Weather, we woke up one day, and which we launched during COVID, and the local business community that had supported us came and said, "Hey, we've got this COVID thing going. Do about local sports, see our kids and at our sports lessons." But this year, this academic year, 24-25, or I'm sorry, 25-26, the 25-26 academic year, we will probably hit 1,000 games live streamed just this academic year.
That is just incredible to think about that. It's something that I think we would like to do down here, but we've bitten off a large bite with the weather end. So one step at a time, as they say, right? But I mean, it's incredible to imagine what you guys have done up there, starting in the back, not alleyway, but back hallway of a radio station, turning into full-fledged
Yeah.
station. I want to pause here for just a
Yeah.
second. Got a lot of folks that are asking about this. Heavy freezing rain in Houston right now. You can upload your pictures using the Mississippi Live Weather app. I'll put those QR codes on the screen there for a moment. Again, free and available for all those different devices. We're talking to Ben Luna, who's the managing meteorologist, owner of Tennessee Valley Weather. But I point out Starkville behind me here. I have real concerns. We were hoping for a boost in temperatures that has not happened. And the icing we're looking at here, what I'm kind of looking at behind the scenes on some of these pictures, unfortunately, some of these, again, this is an elevated surface, and we're hoping the roads are still a little better shape, but that's completely iced over one direction there in the Starkville area, and we had hoped that things would thaw a little bit by this point in the day, and they haven't. So some of these cameras, as I'm going back and forth, I'm watching some of those things. When we find something that I think we need to really call out, we're going to do that as we're having this discussion. You're watching Mississippi Live Weather just a little bit after 3 o'clock. Ben Luda with Tennessee Valley Weather, talking, broader scope, not just about weather here in North Mississippi, but also in the parts of Tennessee, and some history on ice storms. As a person who's an implant here, has moved, at a different point. I've been here 15 years, but I've never had a big ice storm. And this has the potential to be the biggest since I've been here in the last 15 years. And that's the reason for reference, for insight, in a lot of ways, just for friendship, I turn to Ben consistently. One of the best human beings I know, point blank, full stop. Amazing man. And I'm not just saying that because you're on there. I'd say it in front of God himself. I truly believe it. Bring down that lower third. So I kind of interrupted you. I didn't mean to do that. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. And I'll echo that statement back to Matt. Matt's faith really comes through on the air, and not just that, he and his whole family have become amazing friends of ours. I'm seeing the picture behind you, and yeah, that's concerning. But I will. Yeah. There is supposed to be, and I think this may be through UAH, University of Alabama Huntsville, a balloon launch from near the Bankhead Forest, which is kind of splitting the distance between you and me. Yeah. And I'm not sure if that has happened in the past. I know at noon it had not happened, but let me check and see if that's happened already or what their plan is. That was supposed to be in the works. And I would be very interested to see how that data looks, because if you're because Starkville obviously should, and as the lay of the land, that warm air, or that warm air nose is what it's called, starts to creep up through North Mississippi. Obviously, that's going to be something of importance for us here in the Tennessee Valley Weather region. Lawrenceburg to Florence, Alabama, over to Huntsville, and back at the state line, we go down to just south of Decatur and north to Columbia, Tennessee. If that warm air is not as warm, even in Starkville, that's going to be a big problem for us, because it's all interconnected, and that's why we're, doing the network that we're in, because we bounce off of each other, and that's the way the weather works. And that's now a telltale sign of what we could be seeing in my area here before too long, because right now we've got, looking outside, moderate sleet here in Lawrenceburg.
Your cold air should be thicker. We're hopeful that there's not more impacts with you. The models, I think the model, I mean, there's always going to be some wobbling. I feel like they've done a fairly respectable job, all things considered, on this. And they're not going to nail every precip type at every location, but they did a pretty decent job on timing. I think just the duration of the event is something that they struggled with initially, just because, I mean, how often do you have this this long?
Yeah.
I don't feel like our icing events ever really run quite this long.
No, I can't. I can't remember the past winter weather event that lasted as long as what this will start to finish. This has been years, at least since Tennessee Valley Weather has been in operation. We've not had one this long, and I think going back, I don't think in my career we've had something this long duration in the past 20 years. So
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like when you start talking about, any weather event is about not just the potential impact, but the opportunity for that impact to hit you, right? Like the tornado events we get so, not bent out of shape about, but we get so worried about are tornado events where, when we're kind of looking at things, it's like, oh gosh, we could have a bunch of supercells. That increases the opportunity, right? It's not just the impact for one spot, but if you have lots of chances, then you have a greater opportunity. And I think that's the thing about this ice situation that has been so concerning, is your opportunity wasn't just a few hours. Your opportunity was multiple waves over multiple days. And so you have enough cold air, multiple waves, multiple days, you're probably going to have somebody with significant icing impacts, power outages, the whole thing. And maybe we get lucky enough, it's more sleet like it is up there. But unfortunately, I feel like the last hour we've seen a lot more freezing rain for locations in kind of this corridor. Unfortunately, the corridor where we don't have a ton of cameras at this point yet, stretching from Chickasaw County back to northern Webster County, Grenada County back to Calhoun County. I'm concerned that we could continue to have more icing there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's just a lot of potential for this to, lack of a better term, but go south real quick, especially with infrastructure. Even though at the top of our conversation, we talked about how improved our infrastructure is, and I think that's going to hold for as long as it can. But and we had this conversation with my EMA guys yesterday, is that around here, I'd like to think that we're really, really good at convective severe weather forecasting, because we deal with that multiple times a year. A long duration winter storm event, in the South, we might not be the 100% best at it in the world. I think we've done a good job this round. That also carries over to the emergency management response from, hey, they're really good at tornadic responses. They've got that down like an old machine because they deal with that a lot. Winter storms, different story. That now it's reversed up north. They write the book on how to deal with winter weather. We write the book on how to deal with convective weather. And so that's going to be the trade-off. And so I think people foremost remain patient for utilities, fire, EMS, police, any entity that is doing any sort of, because it's something we're not, and we're all in this together.
Okay, that's our Tennessee Valley weather. Appreciate that, Ben. I love how, again, I won't keep an eye on yellow. We'll keep an eye on that, but that might just be, anyway, one of those things that we'll watch.
Matt,
I appreciate you so much for joining us here on Mississippi Live. Whether, kind of comes to these over things. I understand, I have some folks like, hey, we're ready to see more forecast updates. Completely get that as part of this. But in order for our forecast to be right, we have to look at things not just right here, what's the latest that's happening in the models, take a 10,000-foot view, and then make sure that we circle the right part of this. Because ultimately what we want is for folks to not just know what's going to happen, but react appropriately to that information. So, Ben, I appreciate your invaluable knowledge as far as that is concerned, your help in trying to decipher this. And as a friend, just thank you so much for everything you've
Thank
done.
you.
But people on those in the comments, there's one person in particular, a little glitchy in the comments himself, doesn't understand is this would not exist without Ben and the daily phone calls that we've had, sometimes hours a day and middle of the night. So
I love
Ben
it.
is the blood, sweat, and tears helping me out on this. Appreciate that, Ben, and appreciate everything you have.
Matt,
Good luck. I hope
be
you guys
careful.
don't have major issues. We'll see you later.
All right. We'll see you. Bye.
Okay, so you're watching Mississippi Live Weather at 3:14 p.m. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. We do have, some, in theory, school cancellations have been sent in through the email. I want to remind folks that you can actually submit your school closings or whatever using the Mississippi Live Weather app. I'm going to kind of click things over here, bring it in, and then kind of go over to that for a second. And there's a place to submit that in the well, not necessarily the app. You can see them in the app, but if you go to msliveweather.com/submissions, that's where I'll kind of drag it down there for a second. You can see that's where you can put your school closings in there as well. Now, here's the deal. There's some, as you can see, the recapture there. There's some AI that works at this. We've got a team of people helping us behind the scenes across North Mississippi to kind of sort through those. And we will not be putting any, not just school closings, but closings on that don't come from a, thisbusiness.com email address, meaning no Yahoo, no Gmail, no, and I know that some businesses that might be your only email address, and I apologize, but just so we don't accidentally close a business that should be open, we're only accepting those. And I know that will probably frustrate some folks, and I'm sorry about that. So if you would like us to put that on there, we'll be going through more here as we go throughout the next few hours. So I appreciate your patience and understanding as far as that is concerned. As we go back here into the forecast, let's just kind of break things down a little bit. We've shown you some of the ice and the ice continuing to add up. And the reason the pictures and the cameras and all those things matter is I can show you pretty graphics all day long, but if they're based on, faulty data going in or something that's different than reality, then that's all worthless, right? So while Ben and I were talking, one of the things that I was doing was kind of looking at some of those things. One thing I want to show you before we go too far here. Those are our alerts. We do actually have, believe it or not, a flood alert. A flood warning has been issued for locations near the Buttachie River there in the eastern part of Monroe County. Might be odd to say that, but the we're going to see over the next couple of days, and we've already seen today, it does add up to a couple of inches, and that's possible that flooding issues related to it there. Certainly, the latest projections go a little heavier down there, in Aliceville in particular, but we're watching some fetches of moisture up here north, and this is one of the problems. When you're talking about a moisture, rain above an inch, if you're on the wrong side of the freezing line, things go poorly. So when we look at the icefall accumulations, and I'm going to look at kind of future icefall here, and this is going based off of one of the most recent long-range projections, and then we're going to come in, we'll look at the absolute most recent short-range projection. You can't see some icefall totals in excess of 1 inch to 2 inches in some spots remain a possibility by the end of this event, but we are still in the first half. And if you've watched enough football games, it doesn't matter what happens in the first half. It matters what happened before the final whistle. And we expect icing will continue. If you have not had it so far, count your blessings, but there will be more over the next few hours. Let's look at that icing and that freezing rain. And I'm going to look at, the short-term freezing rain here. And so this is going to be a little different than what we just showed you a second ago there. And so as we look at the short-term freezing rain, what's interesting about this here, well, number one, this doesn't get us all the way to the end of the event. This only gets us to really tomorrow morning. This doesn't get us through late morning, so there could be additional amounts. This, again, looking from kind of shorter term here, the amounts in some cases are a little bit lower. That's an encouraging sign. It is interesting that you do have some wobbles in here where it goes a little greater, a little less. We kind of expect some of that. But additional icing, and I haven't played with positioning or anything else on this, But a 1/4 inch of ice is still enough to obviously shut places down, really mess with roadways. There are some spots where we've been fortunate enough that that has not been a huge issue so far. We expect the more people, we will have issues with that going forward. But additional ice accumulations in excess of 1 inch still very much on the table. And that's going to be the freezing rain portion of part of what we are looking at here as we're watching this. So again, a lot of heavy moisture still on the way, and that means a significant icing remains a possibility as well. Mama Justice Doppler radar again. Part of the reason, so in severe weather coverage, we are radar, 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 radar. And the reason we're not, when we start talking about winter weather coverage, is this is like a slow-moving train wreck, where it's just up, you know, here it's coming, still coming. And so, you know, what happens on radar is important, but it's not life-altering this instant to get out of the way. The most important thing that you can do in this situation is stay where you're at. Because I see someone saying, will Fulton be okay to drive home tomorrow? I wouldn't be driving tomorrow to Fulton. I wouldn't be driving this evening. Could you get there? Maybe. Can you make it back? I don't know. You know, I would say that sure that you'd be able to get there this evening, if I'm being honest. And again, we could go absolutely city by city on this, and to a certain extent, we'll, because as we look out in Fulton, notice 3 cameras look okay, and 1 does not. This is ice on the camera there. And so that means elevated surfaces now have ice on them as well. That's going to be bridges and overpasses. Now, MDOT doing the work, the Department of Transportation map kind of covering up their logo there, but MDOT's been throughout the week, you know, doing the work to try to make sure things are better. But, you know, I go there, or I look at Tillo, again, our Department of Transportation, that location at the ground, there's just a sort of tint, the icing. And that overpass there, again, has spots that you can see pretty decent tracks, so things are okay, but it's slushy in others. Is that passable? Maybe. You want to risk it? I wouldn't. So someone says we're glitching again. So I need, is it both of them glitching? Let me look here behind the scenes. I'll keep watching the red on here, and we'll keep looking. I'll pull up my status thing so it can tell me how we're doing on the log files. So that'll open up here in a second. Give me 2 seconds here, because you just said it. Current time is, give me just a moment here to kind of see my log file on this. I don't know if we've had any. It looks like it's largely been okay, but yeah, I do see where maybe we did have a little bit of a glitch there. Hopefully that's not the case. Audio glitching, nothing too bad. If it's not perfect, it's bad. So better now. YouTube is intermittent. Hard to say, you know, and there's, you know, sometimes between us and the end there on YouTube and those places, you know, the data does what data does, right? So keep me honest on that. Let's bring up that chat here. And again, I appreciate Room to Room for sponsoring our Room to Room Weather Center. Let's kind of bring that there more like that. There we go. And all the other sponsors here for Mississippi Live Weather to kind of walk through the situation. Support those folks that support us here on Mississippi Live Weather. Let them know, reach out to them, say, hey, this is something that's valuable. We appreciate you doing this as a service for the community. And then patronize those folks. You know, go and purchase from them, choose them. That's, you know, we're free to you. But I got to tell you right now, for every eyeball watching right now, it costs me a lot of money. If we're honest. By the way, someone's mentioned might be all the tabs open. So the glitching is actually not on my local computer. It's at the one down at the Renaissance Center for Ideas, which is where our main studio is right now. Because I'm broadcasting, hopping from here to there, and then from there up to Nashville, and then from Nashville to YouTube and all the other places that it goes. Crazy, right? But that's the internet, and it's funny how it works. Back roads are bad. The description from Garrett Weston there, main roads are mainly clear. And that is an excellent point to make, because the back roads were not treated, right? Where there has been some salting and the brine down, things are better than where it's not. but even then, in some of those cases, we've got some issues. Like we're looking out here in Blue Springs. You know, this camera up here, the north-facing camera, has been iced, fairly thick layer of ice where it's, you know, completely opaque. That's been iced over much of the day. This one looking on the eastbound lanes there, the two lanes making up I-20, the Toyota plant, are right there. But you can see the bridges, even though these had some treatment, they're on the roadways, trouble, delays, the whole 9 yards on that. Pontotoc, again, while Ben and I were talking earlier, I'll kind of walk you back on a few locations, and we'll come back to Mississippi Live Weather Radar here in a moment. Again, mainly just looks like some sleet there around the ground. It does look like, at least there, it's largely wet. Those folks driving fairly fast. There will be slick spots. I mean, I certainly wouldn't recommend driving that quickly. That's for sure here. I'm going to keep my eye on that. I see the folks saying audio glitching. Oh well, to keep the conversation up there, we're gonna kind of, you know, keep that up and going. So I apologize if that. We'll try to, between newscasts, I have a couple other tricks I can try. Oxford, some of these raindrops right there on the screen in Oxford, those aren't raindrops. That is ice that's frozen to that camera lens there. It gets a little worse as you head back into Batesville. It was a zone back north and west where we expected it to kind of be more significant. But you can see by what's moving across the lens there that is probably some freezing rain at this point there. This is not ridiculously heavy. All rain in Columbus and just wet roads right now, again, from Yanni there. Appreciate that. And, you know, I do see that some, okay, as long as you can hear me okay and you can understand me okay, we're okay. And it's possible, let's be clear, it's possible that we're going to start having, even with cell phone towers, some disruption, because what does ice do? Ice acts then like as an insulator, and I can't guarantee this is the case, but it might not be as easy to transmit out of those. You're going to have at least a little bit of a signal loss coming from those towers, coming from those, and so you know, data becomes more difficult to kind of move on through there. But Batesville, again, starting to see more of that icing. Man, I really wish that Greenwood camera was working, but Winona still also kind of tells the story. Again, that's an icicle right over top in the middle of the lens there on what the ground looks to be wet. So this is freezing rain on elevated surfaces, and on this camera here, right in the middle. Okay, sorry. Let's zoom this in. I want to zoom in right in the middle, and I'm looking, trying to pass that, and give me a moment to kind of look up toward it, because that tree caught my eye there. There we go. You see that pine tree? That's going to be one to watch, because that, and again, it's going to kind of get blurry because I'm trying to look through that icicle there. But you see how it's got that white on the edge there? That's icing in Winona, and look at those power lines. It's coming as close. I'm going to go in as close as we can on this. We'll let it focus. But yeah, that's some substantial icing starting. You're looking live here on Mississippi Live Weather at the power lines here in Winona. Again, you can see the icicles draping off of that. This is some of that radial ice that we were talking about. And so when you take it over every inch of the run and over every one of the needles, the pine needles on that, you'll start to see them changing shape on the way they're drooping down. I mean, you can kind of see to a certain extent that's already the case on that. So icing situation in Winona is getting worse, and that now we have some information to go back to Mississippi Live Weather Radar and Mama Justice Doppler radar and take a look here and start to correlate, because that's been this heavier band. We talked about this earlier, that we were waiting on this heavier band. I'm going to show why, and we're coming in close on this. So let's go back here. We're going to go over to our national surface map for a moment. This wave. This is that wave that we have been waiting on, right? Toward there. It's kind of made it over top of us. So yeah, we had some stuff, but this is the right now. And look toward Texas. Watch this right there. This is the next big wave that will come, and believe it or not, there's another wave potentially behind that. So this is the first icing wave. I know you're saying, well, hold on, but as far as freezing rain is concerned, this is the first one that really starts to accumulate in some spots. So while it's just raining Grenada at the moment, that's amazing and unexpected to a certain extent, considering, for folks there in Winona to your south, this has been clearly some freezing rain and ice out of this as well. So maybe I'm thinking that you might. Here's the thing about freezing rain: it just kind of looks like rain, so you can't always tell that it's not just rain. Bring it back in here where you're kind of the wide shot. Yeah, this is pretty hefty stuff, sort of moving through at this point. So as we're looking toward Winona, and we have some of those, I'm going to cut this of where we're really getting icing. I'm going to cut this down to some of the more intense returns, and maybe this will do a better job of showing you the more meaningful icing. So this is about 20 dBZs. There will be some icing more than this, but this is the more meaningful icing. And hopefully this draws your attention to one of the things that's caught my eye. We did see on that Kosciuszko, a picture from Kosciuszko a little bit ago, where we have this pink, and that's going right over. Still has more icing with it. Hey Siri, call Kelle Bettelblut. Darn it, I see it glitching. Let me make sure it's good. So one of the very valid questions someone just asked a second ago is, why does the radar look so different? So what I did is I went in. We good? Yeah, it looks like we're good. Looks like we're back. Well, see, I'm looking on Facebook here, and it looks like we're good on Facebook again. Okay, well, hold on a second. Give me just a moment. Okay, let's just clear that all out. We'll try again. Hopefully our feed is behaving a little bit better now. I apologize, I just had to kick everybody out just to bring everybody back in. You're watching me at 3:30. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Wahl. The ice storm situation continuing to unfold and expected to get a little bit worse over the course of the next couple of hours here, to have, again, a fairly substantial band of icing that continue to move in. I apologize to folks. We went ahead and, oh man, it is glitching bad, isn't it? Are you still there? Or are you gone? Okay. And we're back. So you're not going to have all the nice comments and stuff like that here real quick. But we should be back up and running on all the stuff. Hey, Penny, would you check to see if the live stream's up and going clean again? Okay, we'll double check that, but I think we should be good. Let me Let me look here, kind of everything. I think everything's working on either one. Oh man, and I'll bet that I've lost the chat, unfortunately. Sorry we had to kick everyone out and bring y'all back in, and it looks like I've lost the chat as part of that, which is fun. That's my favorite. Okay, but audio should be better and should be good. I'm going to kind of bring it up here behind the scenes in the background to make sure that everything is good as far as that is concerned. Give me just a moment. So I'm, again, trying to kind of double check here behind the scenes, make sure everything is good. I'm going to pull up our most recent live stream. Everything good on that? Okay. Let me do that. Okay. Now I can see it. Okay. Ice rain in Chula. Okay. So now we're getting everything everybody's saying. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to look. Okay. Now the volume is very low on Facebook. That's part of that is because I have my volume set at one thing here and apparently adjusted back at the studio. So I'm going to crank the volume back up here. Fairly high, I guess. Check, check. And then I'm going to have to take it down back at the studio in the future. The volume's fine? Okay. Thank you, Penny. I appreciate it. Okay. How much longer do we have this? Hourly says we have until tomorrow at 1. Hey, that's fantastic if the hourly says that, because that's pretty much exactly right. I think we're talking around midday tomorrow that we're still going to kind of contend with this, unfortunately. So yes, we have a fairly significant period of time still to go. Before we had to shut down the live stream and restart this one here, someone asked, I think, a very appropriate question, which is this. Okay, some people's volume is fine. Okay. Asked, why does the radar look so different? What I did is I went ahead and cut out all of the lighter returns, right? So I'll put it back in, right? So this is basically all the returns the radar can show. And when you're talking about light, say freezing rain, something like that, you know, that's important. But we're talking about, and in particular what catches my eye are some of these little waves like that, these little ripples that tell me that there's little jet maxes aloft, little waves of energy aloft that are kind of having localized enhancements and localized bursts. And so that, in that case, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to cut out everything that's not heavy, or at least moderate to heavy. So what I've done is this is where you're guaranteed to be getting something of some kind of significance. You might have light drizzle in some of the other spots, but if I cut it all the way back to here, it becomes pretty obvious where the most intense stuff is occurring. And it's right here from north of Kosciuszko and Ackerman there, close to Starkville and the Columbus area. So that's where we're seeing the most significant icing potentially out of this storm, I think, at this point in time. Watching from Coffeyville, I'd love to know for folks there in Coffeyville how this is looking. You have to work in the morning in Aberdeen, from Aberdeen, and you have to work in Starkville at 4 a.m. I don't know that I would be traveling then. I'll be perfectly honest. I expect that we're going to have significant icing between now and then, and hopefully I'm wrong about that. Stan with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers talking about, you know, trees are now covered in ice and vehicles and other items on the ground are starting to glaze. Roads are still okay. That report from the North Mississippi Storm Chasers there in the Starkville area. So yes, what you're looking at here is, I guess, one kind of example. I'll try to maybe do that to kind of emphasize. I can change the way it looks so that I can hit only the most important parts of this. So hopefully try to make this a little bit clearer, and we can do that on the fly. So that's part of the reason we do it. Because I know this is a new Facebook Live, and some people probably run up on this, you know, a little bit later than others. Here is what to expect, and I want to say this. My concerns have started to shift a little east, and we talked about where this freezing line would set up, and the reason we left folks there in Starkville, in Aberdeen, in Amory, in the pink is because we still expected ice here too. But we've said this over and over again. There'd be a narrow corridor where it went from, oh, that was just rain to that was just bad. And so depending on where that corridor lined up would make a bit of difference. And so when we're kind of looking at this here, that corridor We're hoping it doesn't set up down here, Starkville, Louisville, because when we check our cameras with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers, unfortunately, we're starting to see, again, more icing on a lot of those kind of in that corridor. I'm going to come to the western part of Starkville here. This is our camera near the Adaton area. Again, showing some icing there on the lens. Give me a moment to kind of adjust this. I do want to look around here. So I'm going to go and kind of pan this a little bit around, but I don't need to go far, actually. Let's just go straight ahead. Because what do you see right there, or kind of behind me? It's going to try to look at the trees. But you see whatever that is sticking out of the tower in the foreground there. You might not want to focus on the foreground because I'm in too far. Let's back it just a little bit. There we go. And you could see with each one of those, as I kind of have to back it a little bit, we're starting to get some icing up on that tower. Again, there's drips coming along it, so there may be a little enhancement on it, but certainly cold enough for that to happen, and a sign that with that temperature below freezing, this rain is freezing on contact, unfortunately, and that's going to cause some problems going forward. So that is freezing rain causing issues there. It's starting to accumulate there. Also, going to a different location, we're going to go over to Lafayette County. And in Lafayette County, our camera there in the Oxford area, the Lafayette County EMA, Bo Moore, who we talked to this morning on Mississippi Live Weather, says the ice accumulation is really starting to pick up in Lafayette County. And then he sent in a couple of pictures, those pictures from along, I'm going to drag this all the way over here, so ignore the fact that's going to come across here for a second. But these pictures, I'll double check the location on this here real quick. These pictures are from Highway 6 East and County Road 217 area. So Bo Moore, who is the emergency manager there in Lafayette County, again showing some of the icing. You can clearly, very clearly see, again, more of those pine needles, more of those branches. That's a lot of weight that tree was never really designed to bear. Again, icing on the power lines there, the combination of freezing rain and sleet. And you can see the drooping of the trees. One of the signs that they're starting to feel the stress. This is not breaking point with these, but if we continue this, and we do unfortunately have that potential to continue this into the overnight hours, we could eventually reach some of that breaking point. In a live shot here out of our camera there in the Oxford area. Let's go ahead and look out of this, and I want to look down at some of the trees and get a live look at how they are holding up. And we might not be able to do that. We might end up, might not go that much farther down, unfortunately. So we're going to kind of spin this, and we're going to kind of look at the trees, see if there's a batch there that we see a better angle on. Oop, this is going to spin fast on me, so I apologize. I made it mad somehow. It's not wanting to move. I hope that something's not messed up too badly on that. So we'll just take what we can get on this, and let's zoom it in. And of course, it's going to put the ice in the foreground out of focus in order for us to see the ice on the trees there. And this area of pines here, that's the kind of stuff that we're concerned about. Each of those individual pine needles getting covered up with the freezing rain. That's not good. That's going to be a problem. Let me put this back over here where I had it before. Up in Hardeman County, Tennessee, 1.5 inches of sleet and snow. So we are close to that snow that folks want, but we're close, but we just haven't really gotten it. I'm now curious where more of these cameras are going to probably continue to show issues related to this, where the icing is continuing. And that's one of the things that you guys are talking about as well. It looks like everything's good over here. Is the precipitation almost over with? No. We're far from over. Here in the Room to Room Weather Center, we've been talking about this all week, and especially the last 2 days, 3 days, the duration of this has been the thing. What makes this storm significant is, yes, there is ice. But more than that, it's the length of time it's possible. Starting overnight last night, picking up this morning, continuing into tonight, and then continuing through probably midday tomorrow. So we have a long time to go and a lot more of this to accumulate, unfortunately. Hence the reasons why if you might be new to what we do, first off, we've got an app for that, but I can't show you the QR codes because that's back at the station where it's glitching. I just realized that. Oh well. But you can search for Mississippi Live Weather in the App Store to find the app. I think it has significant value, and hopefully you will as well. But as we look at the threats, this is the same threat map we've shown the last couple of days, but I have some concerns now that perhaps we're going to have to start amending this. Some of those shots I'm looking at out here around the Golden Triangle, I don't have a lot in Fulton there, but there is something going on where it remains possible that I have to add in Louisville and Kosciuszko on some of this peak threat area as well. So this has expanded a little bit back to the south and east potentially. We could just be in that peak time frame for you. We are expecting some warmer air to try to overrun this. We have not seen proof though that that is going to happen as we're waiting for that to kind of take more shape. But when we kind of analyze this situation, we are looking at potential for, again, ice storm conditions. All the counties in purples we've talked about, that's where ice storm is ongoing. And that is not a term, if you've watched me for years, you might not realize it, but that is a term that I have intentionally avoided. I hate the term ice storm because I know what it means to you. You say ice storm, there's only one, 94. And I don't know that this will or will not be a 94. I know that in 2026 that we have a long ice potential and a lot of moisture. And that combination has a large potential to go poorly for us. So is this 94? No one knows. There was only one 94. But I do know that we have significant icing potential. And if we make it out of this without significant power loss, things have gone well for us. Speaking to that point, talking about power loss, and then I'm going to look at some of your pictures here in a second on Mississippi Live Weather Mama Justice Doppler radar. Again, I kind of have this in an odd mode. The colors might look weird. Typically, the way in which we would show this, I think, would have a color table look something about like this. There we go. And I'm just playing with transparencies to try to see exactly how this is going to go, because I'm trying to kind of highlight some of the most intense areas. One of the things that I mentioned this with a moment ago, but we kind of checked the road conditions, and I wish this didn't have this big green stripe here. It's something's different in the data coming in from our data provider there. But you can see, if you just kind of extrapolate the pink through this, where again icy roadways, slick roadways. Maybe not every road is slick and icy, but many will be for a lot of locations. Now, we're not to the real red here icy yet, but it's possible that that is still coming ahead with this, unfortunately, that we could be talking about those icy conditions potentially on the way. But I mean, one of the things the Storm Chaser is talking about behind the scenes here is that icing in the Golden Triangle is starting to pick up a bit more, unfortunately. We'll talk to Caleb about that coming up here in a minute. Freezing on trees and power lines there in Farmington, the description. Your pictures, if you use the Mississippi Live Weather app, we can pull them up right here, and unfortunately, this is the problem. The number of those that are showing significant icing are increasing. This looks like a Christmas decoration, y'all, and we've still got 19 hours opportunity left ahead, unfortunately. I mean, that looks like the kind of icicles my parents would put out as the lights growing up. I don't know if they even do icicle lights anymore. Either way, that is pretty significant icing. Don't eat icicles, because everything that was on the roof, from bird poop to who knows what, is in them. So don't eat the icicles. Okay, are we in agreement that that's probably good advice? Let's see where that was. Appreciate that one coming in. This is from Andy Riley, a certified storm spotter. We appreciate our storm spotters and chasers are out there. That is in Itawamba County in Fulton, north of Fulton there. Or actually, I guess that's a little west of the waterway, so not necessarily north of Fulton. Again, some shots here. That was from earlier this morning. I think we did show that one earlier. I'll bring our gallery back up and kind of the most recent stuff here. Let's sort back through some of these. Again, it looks fake, but that is the freezing rain, right? It falls as rain. We've kind of talked about this a number of times. I know we might have a slightly different audience, and I'm not going to dwell on this. But the freezing rain with this is an important thing to keep in mind. So as we bring it back over here to our main graphic system, freezing rain, oops, I think I sent that back to the beginning. Ignore that. Hit the wrong button. Come back here. It's amazing I haven't done that more, by the way. So you have rain, obvious, right? It's rain, it's wet, it is what it is. But it starts off as snow, melts in the rain, and falls to the ground. Freezing rain is not just cold rain, it's rain that stays liquid until it hits the ground, and because it's below freezing at the ground, freezes. If there's a larger distance that cold air that it falls into, that freezes completely. Well, okay, let's talk about warmer. How can it be warmer above us than it is at the surface? I'm surprised that question hasn't been asked. Maybe it has, and I've just missed it. So as warm air comes out of the Gulf of Mexico, warm air rises. And so the nose of warm air rising above us, and then we have cold air that's really dense, right? Warm air rises, cold air sinks, the way in which, it sorts essentially. And so you typically have this very shallow cold air down at the surface, kind of knifing in from the north. So if we were looking at this would be north, this would be south in this case, and that cold air coming in is just thick enough to be below freezing. And so what falls as rainfall, but because it's colder down here, it then over the course of seconds to minutes freezes. And that's where we get the ice. The more heavy it is, and by that I mean how more heavy the rainfall is, and the colder it is at the surface, the more likely it is that you're going to get significant icing. One thing that still remains a big concern is that locations in kind of our primary risk zone have a fairly deep depth of cold. How deep is that depth of cold air? Is it really, really shallow in, say, 22 degrees? Because that's a scenario we got bad stuff on our plate. Or is it a little thicker in 22 so it can completely refreeze back into sleet? And unfortunately, a lot of what we've been getting in have been those reports where it is clearly freezing rain more than the other. So as I kind of come back here and go back to one of the pictures, again, I appreciate you guys sharing your pictures, your photographs with us here on Mississippi Live Weather. Obviously, that one there, some pretty long icicles because of all the icing there. Checking some pictures here. This is Brett Davis in Batesville. Zoomed in there, but pretty easy to see. But now we've increased the width of this tree branch. Maybe the one up above me is the easier one to kind of see. We're not quite double in width, but you think about that, that greatly increases the weight of the tree branches, which is why, how do we use this information, right? We use this information to make sure that if we are, say, underneath one of these tree branches, that the tree is going to be stressed and it could break. I mean, imagine, if somebody continues to hand you weights, at some point you just can't hold them up, no matter how strong you are. And that's what happens with each of these little branches you see back there. They get coated, and that can more than double, way more than double, the overall weight that the tree is trying to hold. You add in any wind at all, and that's when they break. And so that is concerning to see. Batesville is one of those spots, one of those concerning locations we've talked, about multiple times, possibly being close to the center of the worst of what could happen here. We do have a camera in Batesville through our partnership with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers. Here's a look at that camera in Batesville as icing continues there. Looking out, temperature is 28 degrees, and there is a little bit of a wind. Some projections have had 15 to 20 mile per hour winds. And if we get the kind of icing we're looking at, plus a 15 to 20 mile per hour wind gust, we've got all the stuff that we don't want, unfortunately. I'm going to check a few other pictures here because, again, this paints a picture. Your pictures are so important, and you can send those in using the Mississippi Live Weather app. There's a place to submit those. We're trying to put some albums together so that you can see those online. We appreciate all of you guys that have done it so far. Powerline ice accumulations here. This is going to be in Amory. And I know there were some folks over the last 24 hours that said, oh, I'm in Amory, I'm in this location, I'm in that location. I think I lost it. We have so many people sending in pictures, I might have, here we go. So this is the picture from Amory, sent in using the Mississippi Live Weather app. And that's icing on the power lines there now in Amory. Now listen, kind of looking at this, that is not as significant icing as what we had, in some other locations we were looking a minute ago there. But there were folks last night in Amory that were seeing the fact that projections were showing rainfall, and we tried to very adamantly say that the reason we still had Amory in kind of that pink zone where icing remains possible is because icing remains possible, and it's not just a peak impact area. Again, going back to our kind of peak impacts we've talked about, it might be easy to just look at this orange area and say it's only there, but the pink is still an ice mix there. And as we've talked about a lot of times, if this wasn't a high-end winter weather event, we might not have put peak impacts on there at all. This graphic is designed to only have these three. I added this in with our meteorologist Maggie McCauley simply because we knew that we could identify a spot where we had very significant and crippling icing as a possibility. And so that's the kind of way in which this works. So as we look at some of these pictures, I'm not at all surprised to see icing pictures coming there from the Amory area. Now I'm looking again some of your pictures, trying to kind of sort through some. Again, a lot coming in, and we appreciate that. Let's see a shot here. Ice forming on the lines in French Camp by Megan. Let's take a look here. French Camp in the southern portion there of, that's not the cleanest picture, but yeah, you can definitely see it there. So French Camp in Montgomery County there. Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. So again, ice forming on the lines there in Montgomery County. Again, appreciate all the pictures that you're submitting using the Mississippi Live Weather app. Let's check a few others here as we kind of, again, so many of these pictures, so much power line ice, and I know that obviously induces anxiety. I want to see who this is for a moment. Give Zach Hammond there. And this is Corinth, where we're also seeing it build up on the power lines. Now, that becomes, again, concerning. You're also in that primary risk zone there, where it's just a fairly significant depth of cold air. You're colder up there in Corinth, and so that's where if you get some of these heavier bands, there's a greater potential to cause some real issues with that as well, unfortunately. We have a camera up in Alcorn County. That camera comes to us, again, part of our partnership with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers. And if we bring it back over here, again, looking in the southern part of Alcorn County, this kind of between Rienzi, Kossuth, and Biggersville, kind of sort of in the middle there. Looks like certainly, obviously, a winter wonderland. But I'm going to do the boring thing I keep doing, which is I'm going to go point it at some trees. And I know that might seem silly, but I'm doing that to try to figure out how much longer, largely, we have until we get that catastrophic, icing. And I think that's as far down as I can point the camera, it looks like, as we're looking kind of toward the south there. I'm going to point it back toward the west and kind of looking for pine trees. I'm always going to be looking for pine trees. You can kind of see at the bottom there. Again, a little bit, not as much as what we have for some other locations as far as the icing on the pine trees are concerned. I have not looked at our camera on the Breezy News Tower there in Kosciuszko in a little while. Again, kind of analyzing that. They're in one of the heavier batches of moisture. I mean, you can see the cars kicking up the water behind it. So the roads are still passable there, despite the fact that I do think that we have, again, some icing starting to show up on some different surfaces. I mean, it may just be me, but those power lines down there look awfully light colored, which is probably an indication that we've had them had some freezing going on. I have not tried to see. This camera is stationary, so I cannot move it, but that doesn't mean I can't zoom that in and maybe still be able to. Is it going to move? Nope, I don't think that's going to let me. Okay. Well, I think it's not unreasonable to say that, again, some icing on the power lines there in the Ackerman area. I'm going to come back to Winona. We were looking closely at this a minute ago. We kind of have a fairly heavy band moving through. Yeah, that's what I don't want to see. Again, our icicles there in in Winona are getting longer. These lines are going to be sagging more. In fact, we could probably, I don't know if there's a way, just for my benefit, I'm going to take a picture with my phone so I can compare this here in a minute. I probably could take a screenshot, but I wanted to compare what the tree looks like now, because I don't think I'm making things up to say that is hanging down a bit lower as the weight is increasing. We're going to start snapping some pine branches as this continues. And the problem is, if I step to this side, we have a band moving through right now. Now that band, as you look toward the water back there, it looks like rainfall, and it is rainfall, but that temperature at 30 degrees, telling you, if this were 33, we'd be fine, but 30 degrees, I'm hoping that that sensor is just far enough away from this location that's not the case, but real concerns there ongoing in Winona as fairly heavy icing is moving into and through the area. In fact, on Mama Justice Doppler radar, kind of one of those heavier bands, we're talking, this is kind of the first heavy band of significant icing that is moving through right now. And so I kind of give you a loop here. You can see over the course of the last hour how that has moved into, and we still have quite a ways before it's all the way out. Out here toward Greenville, it's starting to become a little bit lighter, but I really think it is very near where you see the changeover. I'm going to bring it back in kind of our local radar. This is the one out of Monroe County. And again, in the chat, I don't unfortunately have a good way to look at the chat because our chat, I restarted the stream too quickly. And the stream gets really unhappy when I restart it really quickly like that. And so there's certain things I can and certain things I can't do. 31 degrees in Detroit, Alabama. Freezing rain here just a little bit. Yeah, hardest rain of the day now, southwest Lee County. No ice on lines or buildings yet. Hey, you're fortunate as far as that's concerned. Notice how on our map here, see how it has the pink eroding northward? That is something we anticipated, but I'm waiting to see if that's real life or if that's model analysis being figured in on this here. I'm going to stop it on the last scans, and then we're going to look at grody stuff. You know, we have not looked at all the behind the scenes sort of weather data today. I'm going to look at something that's again kind of behind the scenes, because I know for a fact I'm still learning this system, but I'm not going to learn this system with I'm going to try this, you know, instead here. So satellite radar, give me a moment to pull it up. But this is coding in as probably some sleet there just past Kosciuszko, and probably heavy freezing rain potentially. But we'll have to see. What I'm checking is the temperatures related to this and how that is kind of figuring in. So I'm going to go sub-regional sectors. I'm going to come in here to Mississippi. I'm going to throw on, I want surface station plots. Okay, and maybe we're zoomed in enough that we'll be able to see that there. Okay, so let's look at the less pretty stuff, shall we? Because again, I think there is value in making sure we have the most precise data no matter where it comes from. Okay, so this shows, I need counties on there. Give me a moment. Counties, there we are. Okay. So this shows at the freezing point in Winston County, at the freezing point there in Starkville, 33 just above at GTR, 34 there at Columbus Air Force Base, and down to 32 in Monroe County. And then, I can't read that, is that 30? I think that's 30 there in Montgomery County. I'm going to go back a little bit here because I want to see the temperature trend. So we're going to watch this together as I'm kind of looking at this. We have held there for... Again, this is the latest hourly update. Monroe County actually went down to 32 in the last hour. Let's look up here at Lee County. Stayed at 28, continued to saturate. Didn't mean to rhyme. Wasn't worth a dime. We're saturated at 32. We're saturated at 32. Saturated means top number, bottom number match. And in Montgomery County, we went up a little bit. Let's look at this here, 35 and 46 Tuscaloosa. That's how close we are to this not being a big deal, but unfortunately it still is. Okay, what's the purpose of this? Projections had this a lot warmer, and I'm not 100% sure that we're seeing that warmer air charging northward yet. In fact, it largely looks like it is staying put. Maybe the heavier precipitation can you know, as the melting process is occurring, as it's, you know, falling down. It can force the temperature up a little bit, but I'm not yet convinced. So back over here on Mama Justice Doppler radar, again, some heavier bands moving into Starkville. And we've talked about this multiple times today, and maybe it's not immediately obvious. I'm coming in ridiculously close here to Craig Springs, but you see that red? That red that shows up there? That is showing up because this would be red like thunderstorm red. And my side monitors here kind of bleeds over a little bit, but I can see it on my main monitor here very, very easily. A sign that that's some pretty hefty precipitation coming through. And checking with our storm chasers down there, they're talking about how the ice is really starting to kind of accumulate there in and around the Starkville area. And this is one of those heftier freezing rain bands that's moving in right now, unfortunately. I think we could probably confirm that, looking at our various cameras there. Let's go to Ackerman. And as we go to our camera in Ackerman, again, part of our partnership with North Mississippi Storm Chasers, well, now that doesn't look like something, does it? That is a lot icier than it was just a little bit ago. That's the effect of that heavier band. Let's pull this off. We're going to come back and check that camera again here in just a second. So again, right there where we've had these kind of heavier bands in the last, let's watch how long it's taken those to go through there. So the one that's entering Starkville, or just past Starkville, moved into Ackerman about an hour, about 3:14 or so. It's kind of that lead one there, that kind of lead wave. So we're kind of in the heaviest, and it's just come through Ackerman. And so Starkville, if I'm looking out this in West Point, I think this is a good example, what we're looking at in Ackerman, of what that heavy freezing rain, and listen, it's not freezing thunder, ice, whatever. Those chances get a little greater tomorrow, but these are enhancements due to the extra lift. I'm going to zoom in because these trees all look white because they are iced. And so I'm going to kind of look around here, and I might look down a little bit more if I can, and it might not take me down a little bit more. Now that camera's not wanting to move either. Was that an issue earlier with this cam? Or have we lost some movement ability on it? Let me reboot my site here. Give me a moment to kind of double check that and see if... Nope, that's not moving. Well, hold on. Stan and James, ... I've had a couple cameras that are not wanting to move, ... Do we think that they are having some kind of issue, or is this something that was there before and I just don't remember, ? Ackerman as an example. Okay, let's zoom it in while we're kind of waiting for a response there. I want to see if we can tell kind of how much ice. Again, the roadway looks like it's okay right now, but the ice is no question on some of those trees and some of those branches, really kind of coating them. That was a pretty impressive little band coming through there a little earlier on. Unfortunately, obviously causing some fairly decent icing to some of those trees as this heavier band has kind of moved through the area. So again, watching this out of our camera in the Ackerman area. You're going to be zoomed in a lot at these trees. Oh, there we go. So talking to some of the technical folks behind the scenes, they mentioned that the camera housings on these, the entire camera housing is starting to freeze up. So we have the zoom lens, but unfortunately the camera housing is having some issues there. So that's not good. So before we have some other kind of issue here, I'm going to see if it'll let me go wider, or did I get it locked up there? Come on, baby. It's wanting, it's trying. I'm going to hit refresh on this. Give me a moment. Again, this is, there we go. Oh, come on. I prefer it to stay wider. If we're going to get stuck with a shot, let's get stuck a little bit wider. And so I think it makes sense to probably, well, I don't need to necessarily be that wide. Let's come a little bit closer. See if they'll take it up a little bit. No, we're not moving at all. That's not good. I don't want it to spin its wheels. I want to make sure that there's not some kind of a weird gears that I'm going to spin and mess up there as well. So that's going to be our shot from Ackerman. Man, I wonder what else is what else is kind of facing that kind of lockup issue. That's not a good sign. Okay, let's take it back over here. Let's start looking again. I want to look at power outages. Again, these do lag a little bit, these numbers again from poweroutage.us, and in particular looking at the percentages and looking backstream. Obviously what's coming at us is coming at us from the west, and that's where more power outages have come in. We show 52% of people in that one county southwest of Shreveport there near Mansfield without power. But even Monroe, a fairly populated area, we're looking at 33% in that county there where Monroe is located out of power. That's to the tune of 26,000 people. That's a lot of folks there in Monroe, Louisiana without power. And we do have power loss for some spots, but it is still more limited for parts of North Mississippi. Again, 100 or so here, 100 or so there. We have not yet stressed the system, but the thing to keep in mind is this, that kind of when we look at the overall map here, this is what came through this spot. What's here right now came through this spot a few hours ago. And so it's possible that, I don't know about you, but have you ever seen the person that they push up the weight doing their max and they can hold it for a few seconds and then there's a point where they can't hold it anymore? That's something that can conceivably happen to these power lines as well, where they're trying their best and then they just fail. So hopefully that is a pessimistic assessment of the situation. I will agree that remains a possibility. But yeah, not the best looking thing as well. Jesus says nothing in Fulton. Well, then you're one of the lucky ones there. Someone talking about how you can submit your pictures. The Mississippi Live Weather app is the way to do that. And here's a good comparison picture. I think this is an excellent storytelling picture. Brandon sitting in this picture from southern Alcorn County. And it shows you the progression of ice over the last few hours here. And you can see what started off as just the top, coated more, coated more. So the progression that you see there is the thing. This is a slow-moving train wreck or slow-moving accident that's occurring. So you'll go outside. I mean, if I went outside my house right now, I'm really interested. I can see ice on the roof. I don't have icicles. Well, I have gutters. That's the only reason why I don't have icicles down there. And if I'm looking at some of the trees, they largely look okay. I'd like to see that pine tree over there. Hey, give me about 45 seconds. I want to run outside here. So I'll be back in about 45 seconds. I just want to look. And my mic's... So pardon that. Give me just a second. Place my mic usually picks back up, so hopefully you can hear me. Penny, oh gosh, she's funny. So Penny just gave me a note that the dog went outside and it's crunchy outside. He kind of slid down the steps. Be careful. That's that icing that we've been talking about. Looking at the trees here, they're starting to droop a little bit. It's not too terribly bad. But with more on the way, obviously, we have a lot more of this to go before we are all done. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. If you stumbled upon this live stream here, you're watching Mississippi Live Weather, your trusted severe weather and weather experts here across North Mississippi and to a certain extent beyond. We are a live streaming platform. Typically, I'd have more people with me, but I'm having a glitch on one of our feeds. We've had to move over to our backup feed for now. And as we talked about, we have multiple levels of redundancy in here in case something like this happens. But on this wider shot, I want to show you what's happening now and why that matters. So I'm going to use two time frames here. You saw that last graphic. It showed the 4 different time periods on how this kind of played out. And I'm not going to be able to circle it on this. Hold on. I'm going to X that out. I'm going to go wider again. So hold on a moment. I'm going to go back over here and show our winter threats. Now let's go next rad mosaic. Okay. And we're going to make this a 6-hour loop. There we go. And so I'm going to circle start and finish over the last 6 hours here. I'll circle now, This is generally, again, where our heaviest precipitation is right now. Not just the ice, but the overall heaviest precipitation. So that's where it ended. And if you walk back here, this is where it started. I'll wait till it starts back over again. So over the last 6 hours, this batch of moisture has moved over here, and it's moved directly in like that. So we are watching other areas of significant concern as well, mainly and namely, and I'll step out of the way, this one that we have back there into Texas. And so this next wave, again, will continue to move in later on tonight, which is part of the reason why, unfortunately, we're going to continue to have more active weather with this and more potential for icing all the way through the overnight hours. So, I mean, I know that there's going to be some folks out there saying, well, it's not that big a deal. I get it. And you know what? I pray you're right. I would love nothing more than to eat crow on Monday morning and say, oh, it wasn't that bad. That would be the best case scenario. I'm just concerned it might not be the reality of the situation. In Farmington, up in Alcorn County, this picture here coming from, I got to get used to looking at Tiffany. I think Tiffany sent in a couple pictures today. A sign of, you know, the ice coming off of a magnolia leaf there. That is the horizontal icing that we talk about. The concern we have for power outages, that's going to damage some leaves and could damage branches and trees and things like that. But we're looking at radial icing, like how far do we increase the radius? If you think of a line going through, a power line, how big of kind of a donut of ice, if you think of a donut that runs forever, it's a pool noodle. It's kind of like a pool noodle. Why didn't I think about it? Got to write that down. So it's kind of like a pool noodle of ice running along the power line there. That's where we start getting concerned. That radial icing that encompasses it with that. So yeah, that's concerning, and unfortunately, we'll probably continue to have more reports like that coming in. Yeah, looks like the puppos. This one here, they're going to slip. You're going to slip. Let's try to stay in. Let's try to avoid it. I know that, you know, it's I mean, it's not necessarily what you wanted to do with your Saturday, and I apologize for that. But you know, it's sometimes we have to do what we have to do to try to keep ourselves and our families safe. And you know, I pray that this does not go with the power outages and stuff like that. But we have one of those heavier bands moving through right now. As we bring it back here to Mama Justice Doppler radar, and we'll kind of kick things over here to kind of the closest radar site and precipitation mode on that. I've kind of kicked this back into where we're only looking at kind of the heaviest stuff, and we'll bring it here to the present time and put a 1 hour loop on it. And so one of the things that we are trying to figure out is this band that's now moving into Winona producing freezing rain, or is it just rain, or is it sleet? Thankfully, we have a partnership with the North Mississippi Storm Chasers, and they have a camera right there in Winona, and it's one of those that we have zoomed way in closely. And, well, it's time to find out. Is that bending down a little bit more than it was? I'm going to pull up my own personal picture here behind the scenes, and I'll take a look real quick. So, let me compare. A little bit more. Not a huge bit, but this branch there is down a little bit lower than it was the last time we looked at it. And that branch there was not a gap that significant there. I think that's moved a little bit more as well. So these trees, as they pick up ice, we start to have more and more issues related to that. And so power lines and power outages become a greater possibility the deeper in this event that we go. So we're going to dig a lot more again into everything else related to this coming up during our live broadcast here a little later on this evening. I was initially planning on 5 o'clock. I'm going to wait till this line comes through. Will probably be more 6 o'clock, I think, for our live stream. So just for kind of the folks behind the scenes, we'll have all of our people involved with our 6 o'clock broadcast, which is our regularly scheduled time. and then Maggie will probably go to bed so she can rest up for tomorrow morning, and we'll see where we go from there on extended coverage. As we lose the light of the day, your pictures are going to become more difficult to see. Our cameras are going to have a harder time seeing it. And let's be clear, we're kind of parked where we're at for the night at that point. So we might not do necessarily, full on coverage like this here. But impacts continue to be significant in the areas where we talk about peak impacts, and we still have a long ways to go in this winter weather event. As I look at the freezing rain totals here, and I'm going to keep kind of coming back to this. This graphic here is going to update, as we go through this. Hold on, is that truly 18 hour? That is not 18 hour. Hold on. I'm going to skip that. We're going to take that one out because now we're, close to 18 hours from the end of the event. So now we can use the highest resolution one each time and the newest one. So this will be the newest look at future icing, which will be a little different than the last time we showed you. One of the things I find fascinating about this is how it's actually grasping where there could be some sleet. Like, see this kind of darker area here? That darker area there is not actually more. It's actually, I think, less sleet. Yeah, I think that's actually less sleet there. I'm gonna have to look at something because that's kind of an odd coloration there as well. The blue is where we have more sleet, some of the highest amount, freezing rain. And I am concerned now, you can see one of those higher stripes showing up closer to Eupora and another one out here closer to Greenwood there as well. But don't get attached to just the highest on this, because here's the thing, is an inch in Greenwood there is not the highest number, but that's high. Same thing with 1.2 in New Albany and 1.3 there in the Tupelo area. There are some more extreme numbers, but these are all very high icing totals for any kind of icing event, and including the one that we are presently going through here. So we do anticipate, again, travel disruptions will be significant. Accumulating snowfall has been north of the Tennessee state line, but accumulating ice continues to be an issue. Some thunderstorms remain a possibility. We've shown that on Storm Finder on a couple of occasions here, and travel impacts already occurring. They're not for everybody at this moment, but they will continue to become more widespread, and there will be more issues overnight as sub-freezing temperatures. They continue beyond this for a while. There are questions about wind on the backside of this and the impacts that could also bring related to everything going on. Now, I wish I could pull up your chat that we could see it on the screen here. I'm thankful that I do have some folks here kind of helping answer questions behind the scenes. One of them is a valid question for a location that I pretty much not mentioned at all. Well, first off, let's say, do I think it will disrupt travel for Oxford? Probably. As we come back here to, our, we'll bring on Mama Justice Doppler radar here for a moment, kind of go back to that. We expect travel disruptions to become a little bit more widespread. One of the things we talked about, we were talking with Ben Luna, who's with the Tennessee Valley Weather earlier on, was this impact, and this graphic here. And what you're looking at is a graphic that's kind of an agreement between different National Weather Service offices, a group of the part of the government where what they do is they forecast the weather, just like we forecast the weather on TV. They forecast the weather, and a lot of your favorite weather apps have most of the data is either from models that come from the National Weather Service or from actual forecasts from the National Weather Service. Those are the ones we feel a little better on if you're actually getting their forecast. But so many go to model data because it delivers so much, and that's by the way why, as we were joking on multiple occasions with our meteorologist Maggie McCauley through the course of this week, for all those apps up there near the Tennessee state line that were saying 2 feet of snowfall. Yeah, show me that 2 feet of snowfall. But that's what happens when you look at raw model data. Interpretation, understanding matters. And so one thing that I can say about this is I do have, I think, renewed concerns that perhaps this could be too far north for impacts in some spots. But as you can see in this zone here, impacts described as extreme for locations there stretching along and near the Natchez Trace Parkway there. Certainly continuing to watch, again, significant icing potential out of this for some of those folks. So this is kind of, to a certain extent, the bullseye that we are watching with this is that zone there. And again, when we look at, again, precipitation in our area, we are in one of the heavier bands at this time. And we unfortunately are going to continue to bring in a lot more moisture with this that could continue to kind of feed this storm system for a while. As we go back over here on our satellite perspective, and somebody's going to have to tell Gabe Maynard he's going to have to use the other. Hold on, because I'm going to guess it's him. Call Gabe Maynard.
Calling Gabe Marner.
This is what happens when you give people time off, or at least hours off. I'm live. I know, it's fine. Use the switcher computer. Switcher's glitching again, so we probably going to need to restart it at some point. But if you can use the switcher computer, and then we'll time it to where I'll show pictures when you're putting in some of the data. That sound good? That's fine. On the threats graphic, I need you to take the accumulating snowfall down to a level 1 on that. But other than that, we should be good. Sound good? Okay. Yeah, it's okay. I kind of figured as much. But what I need after you get the forecast, we get some of the forecast data, and we're going to go at 6. I put that in the chat. I think so. I hope everyone saw that. Maybe I didn't, but we're going to aim for 6 o'clock because we're going to have to take a break at some point in between here to see if we can get the switcher back up and playing ball for a little while. Okay, yeah, let them know. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, bye. Thank you. Bye. Okay, apparently that text message didn't go through. Appreciate that. So one of the things, again, talking to Gabe a second ago, that if I get my mouse back in the right spot, that we tweaked again, accumulating snowfall. We were level 1 for a number of days. We took it to level 2. I feel like that might have been this morning. It's been a long day. Maybe it was late last night. But again, that's never been high confidence. This is always, for most of the week, been an accumulating ice and sleet threat with some thunderstorms possible later on tonight and already causing travel impacts and hopefully not eventually causing travel disruptions. But that could be the way in which this goes. Back to Mama Justice Doppler radar, and again, we're kind of in the heart of one of those heavier bands at this point here, moving into the Columbus area. And so let's check our Mississippi Department of Transportation cameras in both Starkville and Columbus. Continue to kind of analyze this as it moves in. In the Starkville area, we have a variety of cameras from around town. We kind of put them all on this 4-panel here. As you'll notice, some completely iced over, others with what looks like primarily wet and glossy roadways. None that are close enough that I can really see the power lines, but I can see in that one in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. We'll zoom in on that one in particular. The one up here, those trees starting to look a little bit lighter colored. Again, do appreciate the Mississippi Department of Transportation for all of the pre-treating that they have done. But certainly it's still a long event ahead with more than 18 hours of probably wintry precipitation in the form of either rain, freezing rain, sleet, or maybe some snowflakes at the very end possible out of this. Next camera we're going to check out, we're going to go up to Mabin. We haven't seen this camera probably enough today. Mabin, kind of the northwest corner of Oktibbeha County, southeast corner of Webster County, generally speaking, about where that is. Looking out of our camera there. Again, wet roads, again, ice on the lens, ice starting to form on the lines. Let's be clear here, this is freezing rain. This is trying to cause troubles, but the roads have held up either because of enough traffic. In some cases they have not, but in many cases they have. Now, would I venture out into it? Absolutely not. That is incredibly dangerous. I would say emergency travel only at this point, and they are in one of the heavier bands in the Mabin area at this time. I'll pull up Mabin here for a moment. And as we kind of pan this camera up just a little bit, assuming we can still move it. Ah, we can. I want to look at the power lines up close. I don't see a lot of icing on the tower there, so that's a good sign. Woo, they got that zoom tuned in. Yeah, there is again in Mabin. There's your icing on the lines. This is not as significant as some other spots, but clearly that is adding weight and this is not what we want to see. So icing on the power lines there in Mabin as well. One of the things that allows us to kind of see that is a lot of these cameras, including our Mabin camera, they're up on towers that are owned by the folks at Four County Electric, you know, kind of a cooperation between North Mississippi Chasers, Storm Chasers, and the Four County Electric folks there. So that allows us to kind of directly there look at electrical infrastructures in some cases, because there's usually substations, things like that, kind of right next door. Let's go over to Lowndes County, Caledonia, kind of in the heart of one of the showers right there, fairly near the school. I don't know that we're going to be able to move this one as well. In Caledonia, let's see here if we've got, you know, kind of a look again. 34 in Caledonia. That looks like primarily rainfall. I want to see, I'm going to kind of pan it and see if there's some power lines we could see or some sort of elevated surface where we could check for icing at this point. So I'm going to pan this around a little bit to kind of see the best possible thing to try to find. So I think we're going to find some power lines over here. So let's kind of continue looking at that for a moment. Kind of slide over here a little farther. There's some power lines, I think. I think so, or at least some kind of lines. We'll zoom it in. The sign wasn't what I was going for, but appreciate the folks, you know, Caledonia. They've always been big supporters of us back to my TV station days. Again, I'm going to kind of have to pan down that line to see if we can find a spot that's a little bit closer so we can really zoom in on it. This is about the only time we really zoom in on anything on these, is to try to check this out. Okay, that's probably about as close as we're going to get. So let's go in every bit as close as we can to kind of check out that line there. Just rain. Okay, there we go. That's a good sign. So what you don't see a single icicle there. Okay, so why does that matter? Obviously, there's nothing, you know, on that, but that means this band moving through is in fact moving through with temperatures around 34. And this is one of the things that we've been hoping for, is if we can get that temperature to start going up a little bit, that improves our situation dramatically. It's currently 4:30. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon alongside the members behind the scenes of Mississippi Live Weather. We are a fully digital streaming service covering an ice storm in North Mississippi that has a potential to continue to produce icing between now and probably midday on your Sunday. We are tracking a multifaceted event that has both sleet, ice in the form of freezing rain and freezing drizzle, maybe some snowflakes on the very end of this storm system, a possibility. But at this point here, as you can see, we're watching what is heavier precipitation, but a fight. You were just looking in Caledonia here. Caledonia right on our freezing line. And so that means that you can see how it's kind of going back and forth, right? The freezing line heads north at the beginning of this loop, and it kind of comes back. There is a fight. Warm air from the south trying to win this, and that warm air is largely aloft that's trying to kind of win this over, and then cold air sliding in from the north. And so it's fight night. And the question is, who's going to win? And the good guy is finally winning something, because all of these images I keep showing you, unfortunately, we've seen nothing but icicles, icicles, icicles. This is the first time in a while we've seen and been fortunate enough to see none, because we're not seeing the icicles there in Caledonia, at least on that latest shot. And I'll go back to that Caledonia camera a minute ago. I've kind of zoomed things back out, and we're looking up kind of high on, I believe, the water tower there as well. I believe that's well, hold on. That's running a little bit behind, apparently. There we go. Now maybe, just maybe, I see a little bit of icing on right there on some of that elevated part there, but I don't see much. So thankfully for you in Caledonia, this has not been particularly terrible at this point here, and hopefully that's the case. Now I see someone in Greenwood there. Hey Kim, I'm talking to you, Kim in Greenwood. I'm just going to stare over here. I want to know what things are like in Greenwood. The reason that matters is we kind of have a hole in our camera network. I don't know if you noticed this there. We do have a Greenwood camera, but it's down. And that then leaves this kind of whole very important area from Yalobusha to Calhoun to Chickasaw County there. All of these folks, we don't really have a good visual. We're every direction from that but there. So I really need to know in Greenwood, what you guys are seeing there. Or Vardaman would be another good one. Or, Coffeyville. So what are you guys seeing in some of these locations there? I know I'm wanting to see Nettleton. We don't have a camera in Nettleton. We have been trying to, again, show multiple spots here. But I'm going to just kind of keep my eyes here behind the scenes for just a moment. I want to see what you guys are seeing there in Yalobusha, Calhoun, Chickasaw, Grenada counties. Hey, I see Grenada there in Vardaman. Tell me what you've got. And Jacob, we'll get to Nettleton here in a second. Greenwood, icing on the lines and trees, okay? So are roads still okay there in Greenwood? Greenwood's cold, slight rain, no major icing yet on roads or ground, but some trees have ice. Okay, I appreciate that. So that's an important dot on a line as far as that's concerned. We've had some bands here of icing in and around Shannon, Nettleton. A lot of folks ask about Nettleton all of a sudden. So you are below freezing in some of those spots there. And we have another heavier batch back here from Grenada back toward Duck Hill. But if I take this over to our NexRad Mosaic, which allows us to kind of look at kind of the overall shot here, the kind of tail end of this heavy band that's moving in is back out here toward Greenville. After this fully clears the area, we do get a gap in time before the next kind of batch starts to move in. We're bringing lots of moisture up out of the Gulf of Mexico, and believe it or not, there's a chance for severe thunderstorms just to our south and east tomorrow. That's kind of how overall dynamic this system is at this time. Again, a lot of folks mentioned windshields on cars. Looks like my chat behind the scenes there has kind of come back up, but it does look still like my server back at the station needs a reboot. So we'll have to get Gabe to do a reboot on that here in a minute. Coffeyville is a mix of surface freezing in the pictures from earlier. Yeah, we had looked at that, the pictures earlier, and I think we can probably look at some of those pictures once again as well, kind of assessing some of the latest coming in. And an example of that, this shot here coming from the Longview, Adeton area. This would be in Oktibbeha County. Ice weighing down branches. Again, these pictures, when we talk about pictures, they're sent in from Kaylin there. This using the Mississippi Live Weather app. And you can kind of see, again, maybe a little more sagging on some of those limbs showing up at this time. I got to silence my phone. It silences at 1 hour at a time. You'd think I'd just leave it silenced, but then I'd probably miss something, as if I'm paying attention to it. So, but these trees weighed down pretty heavily, and that's because of some of the icing situation we do have. Again, ice on power lines there in Boonville, Nettleton ice on the water drains, just rainfall. So there are some pockets in there where maybe we're a little milder. But I also see, if I get out of the way for a second, apologize for just standing on it, it does look a little slushy along the roads as well. That also just might be road texture there. But ice starting to weigh some of those lines down there and starting to weigh some of those trees down for some locations down there in Oktibbeha County. Again, you're going to get icicles like this because you have a large flat surface on the roof, and then as the rain drops down, freezing rain is rain when it hits. It just, because of the cold temperatures, starts to freeze. And we might have gone back to just rain, but the thing about freezing rain is a lot of times it looks like just rain and ends up being something more than that. Appreciate that shot from Greenwood. Amy, I was asking for Greenwood. We got it. That's what that shot there was in the Greenwood area. Another shot here from Pontotoc County. This is from Lisa. Lisa in Pontotoc County, again, showing some of the icicles along the edge of her roof there. We talked a lot about horizontal versus radial icing. This is the example of the horizontal icing because it looks like at least that tree there, and we're a little ways back, that's still fairly vertical still, not with as many issues as some of the other trees have had. Some power lines here. You're always going to get me with power line shots. Tina in Burnsville showing at least some icing there on the power lines. Not as significant as some other folks. We really think some of the most significant icing we've seen has been close to the Winona area, but it also could be in that zone right there at the top. I went on the other part here. This is a lot of extra weight for these trees to try to handle, and certainly that is kind of the fight that they're doing there as well. Calhoun County Emergency Manager there kind of messaging me, and Randy, I would love to have you on with me if you're okay with that. I'm going to send you a link. And if you'll click that, I will Let me see if I can get this to work. Oh man, struggling here to get my phone to behave. But we might be able to talk to the Calhoun County EMA Randy Skinner here in a second. So I just sent you a link there. You just have to use your phone with it, and we'll be in good shape. So I'd love to kind of know what's going on there in Calhoun County. So give me a moment here. And I'll hand you my phone, Penny, here in just a minute. Oh, I'm not going to be able to get him on now that I think about it, because that's back at the TV station on the other switcher that's glitching out on me, isn't it? We're going to have to restart that whole computer back there, I think, unfortunately. Well, did we take our chance? Every time we've taken our chance on this, the last day or so, we've had some issues. So we'll see. Here, Penny, here's my phone. There you go. Yes, you can have it. We might end up talking to Randy Skinner on the phone ourselves here in a minute. But again, icing there, one of the main factors. Let's reset here again for a moment. It's 4:39. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. You're watching Mississippi Live Weather. We're a 24/7 streaming service. Typically, we have kind of a rotator of things that we show. But right now, we're kind of in sort of low-key continuous coverage, watching this band of icing moving in. And the icing will continue to become more significant as we go throughout the overnight hours, and eventually could lead to power outages and some other issues out there. By the way, I'm going to check my feed behind the scenes here. We might be willing, if Randy comes on, I'll take a chance to see if we can make it work without it glitching out. Hold on a second. I'll make sure we got it behind the scenes. 6 p.m. My team trying to figure out what time we're going live and bring everybody in. We're going to do it at 6 p.m. tonight for that. So thank you, Penny. I'm going to actually call Randy directly, because I have a feeling that's going to glitch out on me. Just a moment. See if he'd be willing to talk with us. Hey Randy, Matt Lawpon from Mississippi Live Weather. Would you be willing to talk with us real quick about what's going on? It doesn't have to be long, but what's going on in Calhoun County? Hey, that's fine. I understand it. And my switcher back at the studio has been all messed up, and that's one I'd have to use anyway, so it's fine. So I'm just going to put you on speaker. We'll do it old school. Sound good? Okay. Give me just a moment. With us is Randy Skinner. He's the emergency manager at Calhoun County, and unfortunately, one of the places we don't have cameras yet. Hopefully, we can get there at some point and be able to do that. But how things look as of about 4:40 on this Saturday in Calhoun County?
Well, we've started to have a few issues with trees in Bruce. Our north end of the county is more affected right now than the southern part. Of course, that's farther north. It's always going to be worse. But we're starting to see light icing now, countywide.
Any wrecks or things like that? Have people largely been paying attention and trying to stay home?
Luckily, we have been blessed with that. They have listened. They're not out as much. We haven't had too many wrecks at this point.
That's fortunate. And at this point, we also don't get a ton of. I can't remember the power cooperative there. I'm not sure that it's one that reports back all the power outages or not. But
we do. Pontotoc Electric is the one that services the north part of the county.
Yes.
Natchez Trace Power is the ones that do the south part of the county. We have some people out of power in Bruce right now due to those trees falling. I believe it's on Clay Street and a few others there. So they're out of power right now, but I think it's because of those trees.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the question when you say because of those trees, I mean, we're assuming because of ice accumulation, the trees, or is there something else going on?
I don't know specifically whether it was. I just know dispatch told me we had 2 trees down in Bruce.
Okay.
Whether it was due to just weight from the ice that's already on it, or whether I'm not sure
Yeah.
about that. But
That
I
makes
know
sense.
that's the reason for the power outages there.
So, you know, you've lived through a few of these over the years, and we still got a long ways to go. And I don't know enough county by county on how 94 went, but clearly everybody's been talking about that. You know, what is there anything you remember of 94? You know, I mean, you probably weren't highly likely you weren't in this position at that point. You know,
No,
what's your memory of that like in Calhoun County? And were you in Calhoun County at the time?
I was in Calhoun. I do remember '94 well. We had it was a lot worse than what we're currently seeing right now. Now it may later on get to that point. You know, we still have rain falling here pretty rapidly right now, but it may get to that point. But it's nowhere near at '94 here in Calhoun. I can remember being a young man. I think we were at deer camp. We had to cut ourselves out. So I mean, and the trees sounded like a war zone popping, and it was horrible back then. But
Yeah.
we're nowhere near that stage yet.
No, I would agree. I don't think there should be nobody near 94 at this point, and I think again that it might be the benchmark for people, but that doesn't mean that's the reality of this situation. This just for me, looks like one of the more significant icing events in my time here in Mississippi, and unfortunately, we got a long time to go on this. So again, go ahead.
Matt, this one will be, like say, it's about 30 some odd years since '94, right? Well,
Yeah.
this probably will be the closest Calhoun County will have had to the '94 event. Now, I doubt we will reach that. I hope and pray we don't.
I know, me too.
But like I say, this will be the closest we have come to it since then.
You know, so just if you don't mind me asking a personal question, you know, do you guys, you know, are you going to be at the emergency management, you know, building this? Is your family in a place where they have backup power? You know, like I'm just curious from an emergency management, you know, preparedness standpoint, you know, what kind of preparedness things you put in place for your family? And this is not a have and have not situation. It's just a learning experience for everybody because it might be another 30 years, it might be another 3 years, but there will be a next time.
As far as from an emergency manager standpoint, what do we do personally for our family?
Yeah, I'm just curious because you know in my case here, you
Okay,
know, yeah, go ahead.
We try to get everything we need for our families up front. That way, if we're called out, like my personal family, I have a generator here for, you know, electric if something was to go out as far as the grid. We have 3 different heat sources: kerosene, propane, electric backup, on generator. So, I mean, we've got several different things here for my family. We always try to make sure to get that taken care of so it's not on our mind when we're out working if we have to go somewhere.
I think you nailed it there. It's the same reason why when we built a house, we were blessed that, you know, made enough money that we were able to put in a storm shelter because for me, I need to be able to turn off, hey, could there be a tornado heading toward my house? Well, I don't need to worry about my family. They need to have a place of shelter. And I know that for you to give the people of Calhoun County your best, you have to know that your family has, you know, the best that they can there. So
Absolutely.
I completely
Absolutely.
understand that. For folks at home that might be watching and might be concerned, you know, one of the questions is if we have power outages, are there any warming stations there in Calhoun County or that people in Calhoun County have access to when the time comes?
I talked with some mayors yesterday at Bruce, Calhoun City, Vardaman. They do not really have a building right now that has generator backup. They're working on getting that, but it's one of those deals where this storm kind of caught them at a loss. But Bruce, they do have the capability to do that. The mayor told me it would be out at the park. There is I want to say it's a practice building or I'm not sure of the name, but there's a like a practice facility or something out there at the Bruce Park that they have set up just for that. Now, he did let me know that it would be available as long as heat lasted, whatever source, that they have that they're providing with, be it gas or whatever. It's tentative. It's not a shelter, a full-blown shelter. It's more of a warming station only, so they will not be providing meals or lodging or anything like that. It's more just a place for you to come warm up. Same with Calhoun City. They're using Calhoun City Fire Department, last I heard. They have generator backup there. They have the ability to have people there. But like I say, it's not a shelter, it's a warming station.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction. Is that these are places if you need to warm up, you go. Not places where if you need to stay for days, you can go. There's just let's be honest. There's no budget and infrastructure for that in most counties here in Mississippi.
Matt, I hate to interrupt, but what we were told was Red Cross is not going to mobilize their fleet. They're grounded pretty much due to the weather. They're not going to mobilize until after the roadways are clear. So as far as being able to stand up a full-blown shelter, we do not have the manpower to do that without Red Cross's help. So that's another factor we're dealing with right now. I can't spare any of my responders to stage a full-blown shelter right now.
Yeah, I mean, because you guys have to be staged for, I mean, imminent life and death situations, right? You know, which we're hoping we don't run into, but always remain a possibility. Well, anything else you want to add, Randy?
I think I just got a text message from somebody that said, "Don't forget Sabogla." I think let me make sure I get this right, Matt.
I know you're fine. I get it.
The Sabogla Fire Department has a warming center as well.
Okay, so the Sabogla Fire Department. And I just want to note that that is one I learned right there. I've always said Sabogla. It's Sabogla.
Hey, I've heard everything from Sabogla to Sabagula to everything, but it don't matter how you call it, just don't call us late for supper.
Don't call you late for supper, and don't call out your name for a tornado warning for a while, right?
Hey, that's it, brother. That's it.
Man, okay, we'll do our best to do both of those things, but appreciate you so much, Randy Skinner, of guess emergency manager there in Calhoun County, kind of a hole in our knowledge. Thank you for filling that in for us here on Mississippi Live Weather. Y'all be safe. We'll be praying for you and your folks that they make it through this, and hopefully we get to the end of this and we say this was nothing like '94. Now that would be the best news ever.
Okay, we'll see you, buddy.
Okay, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
So again, some on the ground truth there. Again, appreciate old Randy Skinner there. You know, known him for years with some of the tornadoes we've had come through there in Calhoun County. Great guy, you know, and good group of folks out there trying to keep their families, their friends, and neighbors safe in this active weather. Current time is 4:50 p.m. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon. You're watching Mississippi Live Weather, and you're watching Mama Justice Doppler Radar. There's a few things I want to show you here. I want to attempt to take a look here on kind of the wider shot on NEXRAD. See some of the drier air that has kind of encroached in here. Clarksdale, Cleveland, we've seen a little bit of a dry slot develop of late. Let's check out some of the cameras back that direction. Let's kind of correlate that. We'll start actually, I think, up close to Helena, the bridge that goes over top of the Mississippi River there. Ignore the fact the one behind me is a little locked up. You have the one on the top that's fully iced over. You have the one there that I can zoom in, but not zoom in any way, shape, or form. You can see, and I saw some reverse lights there a second ago, as what's probably happened with this guy here going over the Mississippi River Bridge. He's trying to make a way where they could both get across at the same time. But why is there a person standing out next to it? Probably because they're spinning their wheels trying to go up. And listen, as a person, a meteorologist, I've had to try to get to the TV station and back before and go up hills. It is one of the scariest things I've ever been a part of, because you start going, you're spinning, and you start going sideways, right? And I'm hoping that guy, look at the tires, look at the tire position, he might be spinning going sideways there. I don't know what he's got to do going over to Arkansas, but that's probably not the right choice. Best of luck, friend. But you don't need to be driving on that. But this is a free country. Just don't take your freedoms and put other people's lives at risk, including first responders. Hopefully things go well for that guy there. Clarksdale, again, we have a coating of sleet all over the ground, a little bit of snow earlier on. The trees do not look as iced over there. I want you to notice, despite the fact that there's a lot of white on the ground, and I'm going to go to the Clarksdale camera. We're going to take a look at this here. I don't have access to the Clarksdale camera, it looks like there. So I know that I know that we have some folks watching behind the scenes that can say something about that, but for one reason or another, I don't have access on that one there. Guess I hadn't tried to move it. But what I was going to point out is these don't look quite as frosted up in the trees because most of what is falling in Clarksdale or has fallen is more sleet. And it is that freezing rain that is the problem where we get the coating of ice on all the surfaces. And that's part of the reason, again, when we look at our winter threats, that we have, again, this at a level 5 confidence of ice in the form of both that freezing rain, oftentimes just referred to as ice, or sleet. And so high confidence, high travel impacts, as you saw a moment ago, someone trying to go over the bridge there just up the road, probably not a situation that's going to end very well, but hey, listen, I hope for their sake it is one that does. We have a winter weather alerts for every county that we cover with the exception of Pickens County, Alabama there at this point in time. We're hopeful maybe you're just warm enough there. But most of us are under ice storm warnings, as you can see, Lowndes County, Winston County, Atala County, back in Holmes County, Carroll County, and LaFleur County, all in effect until 6 p.m. this evening. It's good, tomorrow evening. Man, gotta keep my brain straight on that. And that's the weird thing, how long this event is and will be. Because again, almost 12 hours ago, we started our coverage at 6:30 a.m. We've been sporadic in between related to that. Our peak impacts, again, continue to show this graphic. And, you know, I still think that this is the primary risk zone. But on the north side of this here, like we showed Clarksdale a minute ago, the peak impact, while still an ice mix, it's an ice mix under everything here. The pink goes everywhere beneath the orange as well. But, you know, up here, part of the reason we did not have this northern sliver of the state is because we expected to have more sleet, and sleet is less likely to ice over the power lines. It just doesn't stick to the power lines as well like freezing rain does. And so you tend to have less power outages. You tend to have less trees that break. Sleet messes up the roads, makes it to where it's difficult to travel, makes it where you don't want to get on porches and things like that. But it tends to be less harmful to infrastructure and foliage because of that. As we come back to Mississippi Live, Doppler radar, again, we're kind of working our way down some of the cameras here. I want to revisit what's going on in Pontotoc County. Pontotoc, we kind of seen a little hole, but the precipitation's kind of picked back up here of late. Let's check Pontotoc County and our camera there on kind of the south side of the Pontotoc area, Pontotoc proper. And we've been looking toward the ground there, looking at roads. That doesn't terrible by any stretch. P-O-N. Let me kind of pan this around a little bit, kind of get an idea, see if there's something else. And unfortunately, we don't have any power lines along that road there. As I kind of pan this to kind of the north and east, we're just kind of looking around the road. So I apologize, it's going to move kind of quickly there. I do see a little frosting, if I can get that to stop, a little frosting right behind me on that tree there. So, I mean, clearly we still have the ice. Maybe not as thick as some spots. Let's go back a little bit and we'll zoom that in. So let's zoom that in and see how much ice we have on the needles. And again, it's the pine trees in particular that, you know, concern me because there's just so much to ice. We're zoomed on all the way there. Can't really get a good look at it, but a decent amount of ice showing up there on the trees in Pontotoc County. Not as much as it has been in some other locations. We'll kind of wait for this to kind of get back into focus, and I'll slant this up maybe just a little bit more as we kind of look toward the north and west. Drops on the lens there. Again, that is that kind of freezing drizzle ongoing at this time. Let's go ahead and if I step out of the way here for a second, it's kind of entering that band, so I'd be interested to see, you know, how much more this adds within the next little bit here. Back to Mississippi Live weather radar, or otherwise known as Mama Justice Doppler radar, and kind of on the composite here. We do see, again, a little bit drier out here, Shelby. We have also cameras in Cleveland. Let's kind of work our way down there and kind of compare the difference as this band has exited on kind of what it's left behind. Clearly very little visibility on our camera there in Shelby. Let's check that one out. because what I see in the foreground, I see something dangling in the foreground. I'd like to know if we can kind of see what that is, and I might not be able to. That camera might be frozen. It's either that or really delayed. Oop, nope, we're going to have this jump all over. It's a little delayed. Oops. Okay, so because of that delay, it's going to take it a minute to get where I need to go. So I'm going to have to guess, so this is not going to be as precise as sometimes when I do this. But I want to know how much ice we kind of have on that there, because we're kind of assessing the backside of this. And Ethan sent me a picture of the radial icing. We'll see if we can take a look at that again here in a moment. Oh yeah, look at that jumping all over on me. Sorry about that. But anyway, I can see some icing on that line there. Whatever cord or line that is there in the foreground, and obviously most of our view is obscured by that. Check our gallery here. Here's some, yeah, here's some of that radial icing. I think Ethan, no, Jamron sent that. Give me a moment. Got a number of folks sending in pictures of power lines. I know, isn't it funny, the ugly things that I'm going to put on there is, you know, kind of the preparatory kind of help sort of things. Sam in Ackerman showing some of the ice on the power lines here. Again, all of our pictures sent in using the Mississippi Live Weather app, free and available for all of your different devices. This looking in Ackerman, again, ice draped off of some of the power lines there. It's not extreme, and this is not power outage level yet. The concern is we just have more opportunity with more showers ahead, and hopefully they say just showers and not, you know, more significant types of icing, which certainly is still on the table as a possibility. Begin to appreciate Sam's picture there in the Ackerman area, and our camera in Ackerman, which we've been checking quite a bit. Again, kind of checking in. We want to see the progress, how things change over time. Camera there in Ackerman. Again, all the trees with that little bit of a glaze on them. The roads with a little bit of sheen. Hopefully still primarily wet. The temperature actually, I think, up now to 32 degrees in Ackerman. This is that little bit of warmth that was coming in. This is not the end, though, because later tonight we have another batch that kind of rolls in behind this. So we are not at the end of this icing event. We're not even quite to halftime. Unfortunately, we've still got a ways to go. So if you're looking at this, it's like when your team is leading by 30 points in the first half and you're like, yeah, we got this. And you get to the second half and you get your beat. We're hoping that's not how this plays out. But Ackerman, we are seeing some icing, and on Mama Justice Doppler radar there, again, this heavier icing band is kind of translating through. We're hopeful maybe it's pushed the temperature up just a little bit. Near Biwai, pretty much right along Highway 15 there, and Highway 9, south of Eupor, where that is kind of the heaviest at this point, which is probably pretty close to where our camera is at this time. And then a little bit drier air. So this is kind of the beginning of the end of this kind of heavier band. I say that, and we'll double check the back end. We'll go to the Jackson radar site for that. Actually, I was just looking too high. We still have more, again, back there closer to Hollandale and Yazoo City. And again, kind of this next batch moving toward Chula and through. Current time is 5:01. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. You're watching Mississippi Live Weather. We are probably going to shut down this stream for a little bit. A couple reasons why. I know it's helpful, and I know it's moving through, and I know that we have concern. But in preparation for our 6 o'clock newscast, I'm still dealing with a couple of gremlins on the stream. I've been watching it for a while. It looks fine back at the